Right behind me we have a crossroads of the canal, an abandoned canal that way, the canal being restored that way, and quite a ferocious weir right here. So I'm on the Severn. The water's still coming in, the tide is still flowing up the river. We're obviously it's spring tides and stuff now, and I think the bores have been happening recently as well, so it's very, very high here. Plus we've had a lot of rain. But what I'm here for isn't the Severn, it's a continuation of the videos I started making quite a long time ago. Well, in fact, the start of the videos I started making a long time ago on the Cotswold Canals, in particular the Stroudwater. This is the only section of the Stroudwater I haven't covered. Now, just up the river, just here, you'll see a bit of a cutout, and that was the original entrance to the Stroudwater Canal when it was built in the 1770s. Other things happened along the route that meant this section closed. So this part of the River Severn runs past the village of Upper Framilode, and you may notice this wall going through. Now, if you follow this, there's flood defences everywhere. That's because in 1607 there was a flood that killed thousands along this area. You can often see sort of date marks or water level marks etched into walls on churches. This church came much later, I think this was 1800s, so there's definitely nothing on there. But there's flood defences all down through here to try and stop that. And that actually plays quite an important part in the Lost Canal that we're going to go and explore. We're just walking up to a bridge now. This was once a swing bridge, but since been lost completely. This won't ever be restored. I hold out hope this section maybe one day when the rest of the canal is running, but I think it's doubtful. It will never go back to the Severn where it started from. So what you have here is Lock House just up ahead of us here, and the canal would have run through here, which is kind of still there. Swing bridge right here, and then across over to be cut into the River Severn, which is just over there. Just inside here would have been a lock, which would have took you down to the river, and there was also a basin here as well. The buildings over the top at the back there, I'm not going to fly the drone too close to them because it's private property. That was the original warehouse, which is now split into two properties. And then here's the line. So as you can see, it still exists. There were work parties down here at one point. I don't know if they're still doing it. They have done quite a lot of work down here over the years to sort of maintain it to some degree. This is very reeded, obviously, as you can see. But the original walls here, which would have gone into the swing bridge, still exist. They're still there, look. And they go right the way round, all the way through. You can see the tree growing out the top of it there. So there were plans for a canal through here, sort of late on in the 1700s. Not really a canal as we know it. It was more of a sort of modernisation of the river, which is why the Stroudwater isn't called the Stroudwater Canal, it's called the Stroudwater Navigation. Now you'll see as we go through the video points that I'll point out where maybe the canal once could have gone into the river, or maybe once where it was canalised. So the plan was to serve the woolen industry and be able to sort of move goods, but the mill owners didn't like it, so they kept kicking off. The idea was arrived in 1728 when John Hoare, who had previously succeeded in making the River Kennet navigable, suggested a canal of around 8.2 miles. Which would have been suitable for 60-ton barges. Then the Act of Parliament was obtained in 1730. It was supported by those in the cloth industry, but not of the millers. The millers still had power to shut the navigation off. They didn't want to lose the water that fed their mills, and rightly so. You see it quite a lot on canals. The one that always springs to mind is the Cromford, where the Butterley Reservoir was built to fill up on a weekend, on a Sunday. They could take water out of the river, feed the reservoir, and then throughout the week they could drop water back into the canal from the reservoir. The reason for that being the mills were shut on a Sunday. As you can see, this section here is kind of opened up a little bit. I know this was one bit that was definitely worked on, so I expect some reeds were cleared. You can see here where some repairs have been done sort of to the banks to hold the banks better. That's just willow. And then we've got the Ship Inn here, which is meant to be a very good pub. I haven't ever been in, I always time it wrong. It's got a great reputation. I've got a friend that lives down the road. Hi Luke. And he talks highly of it as well. So all down this section you can see you've got these houses on the edges, and back there you have like a little wharf before the bridge. This is much the same all the way through, and you can kind of imagine 200 and odd years ago this would have been a bustling area. Boats all moored up here, waiting to go out onto the Severn, waiting for the tide to be right. I expect the shipping was incredibly busy, so it probably had all the boaters in there spending their wages. This is cool. This is the end of a oil tank, and they've cut the end off and turned it into a boat, which is bloody brilliant. When they had their oil tank replaced, free boat to get on the little bit of canal here. This then leads up to our second bridge, which is Saul Bridge, or Moore Street Bridge. This was originally a humpback bridge, and then in 1854 it was replaced by a swing bridge to improve navigation. You used to get quite good boats coming up through here, so I expect it was something to do with that. The trows were massive. I'm just going to take a little detour from the canal now and head just over there. So we've just jumped over from across there, and this is the River Frome. It actually splits here. This is like a little island, but this is the main course of the river. You can see it's running pretty fast, and it's very high at the moment as well. This played quite an important part in the war of worries about access from the River Severn to the River Severn of the Germans if they ever invaded. Now what they actually built, and this is the start of it, was the GHQ lines, which is the general headquarters lines. Basically after Dunkirk, after all the equipment was lost, they needed some way to slow down traffic should the Nazis invade, so they could organise their faster defences and bring them to where they were needed. So there were 50 defensive lines constructed across the country. After the coastal defences, the GHQ line was the longest and most important, and designed to sort of protect London and the industrial heart of Britain. So the green section is what we're on now, and here is one of the pillboxes. It ran from the northern end of the Taunton stop line, which was near Highbridge in Somerset, along the River Brue, across to Wells, and eventually came up onto the Kennet and Avon, from Bradford and Avon up to Malmesbury, Abingdon, and eventually up to here. And this was designed to protect Bristol, Avonmouth and Sharpness, which is where the canal we're going to go to shortly ran to eventually. Look inside, hopefully you got a good view on this. So obviously these would have been machine gun turrets, and they were here to protect the rivers, canals, roads, depending where they were. And so this would have played a massive part in sort of defending our industrial areas should the Nazis have invaded. Obviously they never saw action. The Dad's army would have been in here ready to go. Locally there were two further lines. There was a red stop line which came off at Malmesbury, and then the blue one which kind of followed the Kennet and Avon up through, and I'll do some videos on that in the future. So back at Saul Bridge and onto the canal. Now the idea of 1730 would have allowed the millers to close the canal for 2 months of the year. And also there were ridiculous tolls imposed on it, which made it completely useless to anybody that wanted to use it. So nothing was done. And then John Dalloway was appointed as a commissioner under the Stroudwater Navigation Act of 1729, when approved in 1730. And he appointed Thomas Yeoman to do another survey. And in 1754, new plans were published, and it was for a navigation from Wallbridge, which is the Severn, and it was going to cost about £8,145. It was going to require 16 locks and 4 stanks, which were kind of like a half lock. This didn't really go ahead, but by 1774, canal building had come on leaps and bounds. Dalloway's son William asked Thomas Dadford Jnr. We've covered him quite a lot. He did the Leominster Canal, the Mononbrett Canal, and John Priddy, who had been an engineer on the Droitwich Canal, to carry out a survey. The cost of the canal, which avoided the river now, it wasn't a navigation anymore, it was a canal, which put the mill owners out of the picture, and the price doubled, over doubled, and it was £16,750. They soon raised some money. They kind of decided that the Act of 1729 was still valid, so work actually started earlier on. There was a legal challenge building the canal by the landowners and millers in 1775. There was an injunction, and it ruled that the Act didn't cover the work, and then another Act was obtained later on, which started the following year, 1776. So where we are now, you may see that we've lost the canal. So we are on a flood defence, and you can see the River Frome just below us again, and you'll see this bank. Now this isn't the old bank of the canal. The canal was here a bit lower down, I believe, and this was built to stop the flooding of the River Frome from flooding all this farmland here. Now, back in 1607, there were, like I say, over 2,000 deaths. There were also 200 square miles of farmland destroyed, which obviously back then was quite a major thing. I'm not too sure if people then died from starvation. So these defences are there to stop property damage, stop farmland being flooded and stuff like that. And you can see how high this is now. It's that wonderful time of the year. The lambs are out. There's loads of it. One thing you may notice is how straight this bit of river is. Now, I'm not too sure whether that is done because of the canal. Certainly on the maps I've got showing the canal in place, the river runs straight next to it. I'm not too sure if the canal straightened it or if it was the fact that when the original act was in place and work started in different places, parts of the River Frome were straightened and widened to make a canal, not for travelling, for transporting goods, but the landowners made it for pleasure boating. So I'm not sure if this was one of those. There is certainly one up just past Whitminster Bridge, but I'm not 100% sure on this, so please do put a comment in and tell me if that's right or not. So why was this section of canal abandoned? Like I say, the main canal wasn't abandoned until 1954, but this was abandoned much earlier. So hopefully from this drone footage you can see where the river not only narrows from further down the Severn, but it also then comes up into a series of S-bends. So on high flow, these S-bends became very dangerous. Boats were lost quite regularly. So in 1827, the Gloucester and Sharpness Canal was opened. It was also known as the Gloucester and Berkeley Canal, and it was a ship canal. And that allowed, from Sharpness docks, that allowed boats to come up from the wider, safer part of the Severn to come up to what is Saul Junction up ahead of us. So look at it. So this has all come up in the past hour, and it shows you why this flood defence is needed, because right now all of this low-lying flat land here with the houses, the stables, the sheds, various farms and stuff over there as well, it'll be flooded now. So Lock House, where we started to walk, and this section just here are actually the only sections lost of the canal to private land. Every other bit of the Stroudwater is still in ownership of the original Stroudwater Canal Company, who never went out of existence. They always owned all the land, apart from these two sections. Now, I can't ever see this being restored. It would be nice for certainly the shipping and the villagers down where we started to get the canal back to probably the first swing bridge, maybe a little winding hole back down there. So just over the other side, we are back to canal again, but this isn't the original canal. The original canal carried on the line up past the River Frome and across to join the rest of the Stroudwater Navigation just over there. This was built when the Gloucester and Sharpness was built, and it took the canal up to the height of the Gloucester and Sharpness whilst installing a lock to stop them from stealing water from the canal and to bring it up to the same level. So we've just walked up through there. River Frome is there. The old line would have been just there. And then this is Stroudwater Lock, which leads into Saul Junction. Now this was actually restored in 2016 as a heritage feature by the CRT. You can see the paddles on this here, look, which are really quite distinctive. They're quite cool. See it wound on here. We pulled that across. I imagine that's open now, and probably vertical was closed. So you might notice the Stroudwater again turns and goes at an angle here and then straightens up. So the old canal would have run probably on the other side of Junction House here and through the back of here. So here's a swing bridge in action. This is just a pedestrian one. There are a few bridges up here which are vehicle. Every time a boat comes through, it's got to open up and swings right across the other side out of the way. No restriction then in the size of the boats coming through, as would have been the case further down on the old humpback bridge we described it was replaced. We've got one more thing to see on this video. So this is obviously the Gloucester and Sharpness. It's a ship canal. This is the spillway down into the Frome, which is, as you can see, pretty wild. Got the gears all here, looks automatic. And then, to the continuation of that stop line, we have walked from over there, and again we're on a canal. This was here during the war, the river, and we've got another pillbox. You can see now there's back boxes in this one, just up there, look. So they're still being used. So the entrance is sealed off, you can't go in, it's illegal to disturb bats. And then you've got the stop lines, as I mentioned here. So this is where we started, and we walked down to here basically. And there's your green stop line. You've got the Kent and Avon runs through here, which is your blue and your red. So thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Have a great day.